Alrighty. It's like we're gonna get this rolling. We still have people coming in, but we'll be live online. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. Welcome if you're on Zoom. We're excited about tonight and having Parker teach us some knowledge about real estate investing. But my name is Austin, and I'm one of the regionals here at Point with Parker and Darren. Give it up for Darren for setting this up for us. Yeah, give him some love. A couple of announcements. We are going to be doing things like this where we have like a workshop every other week, but the off week or we're going to have next week another sales training. So we had our first sales training last week, and you're welcome to come to that if you're not in the company, or especially if you are in the company, to be there. And then the following week after next week, so the week of the 22nd to the 29th, most of our company will be on a cruise. And so then we'll be back after that. We'll have a sales training week following that. And then the next one of these like personal development workshops will be on the 9th of February. So put that in your calendar. So basically we'll have something here every Wednesday night and at 8 o'clock for you guys to get better at selling or get better as a human being. So
follow us on Instagram, point_pros, point_pros, and
point_pros.
we'll be sending out announcements about free stuff like this.
Sweet.
And Mobet is after, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say there's food after. So if you haven't eaten, stay and eat. If you have eaten, stay and eat, because there's going to be a lot of food. So with that, I'll give it up to Parker. This will go about an hour. He's going to teach us. So think of questions and there'll be a Q&A at the end. So give it up for Parker Vassau.
Cool. Thanks for being here. This is going to be really fun. I'm used to in this room doing sales trainings and leadership trainings, so it's going to be fun kind of mixing it up and training on something else tonight. So I am really passionate about real estate, and if you know me or if you're close to me, you know it's something that I talk about a lot. And there's quite a few people in this room that share that passion, and some of you guys I feel like could teach this just as well or better than I could. But I'm excited to be the one that is up here tonight. So tonight it's not about sales. I'm going to talk a little bit about sales being kind of the vehicle that's allowed me to do some of these things and participate in real estate investing, but it's not about sales. It's not about me. I am going to briefly share my story tonight, just so you can kind of get a feel for what my journey has been in real estate. But it's about you guys, and we hope we want to do these personal development things to help just add value in ways outside of just teaching you how to sell. So that's the objective tonight. So tonight will probably be about an hour, and hopefully it is worth your time. So first thing that I'm going to cover tonight is I'm going to briefly just explain my story and kind of my path with real estate. I'm going to cover the basic benefits of investing in real estate, and I'm going to compare it to stocks and some other places where you could park your money. I'm really biased, but I love real estate as a place to put money. And so I'm not going to use the whiteboard much tonight, but I'm going to use it a little bit just to kind of show an example of why I really like real estate compared to stocks and some other things. I'm going to answer the question, where should I start? So if I had to start over, I'm going to kind of walk through like a playbook that I would use if I were trying to get going again and investing in real estate. And then we're going to finish with a Q&A. And there are quite a few people in here that I know own rentals, and I might call on some other people to answer some of those questions. David in the back owns some properties. Tanner, there's a bunch of people here that own rentals. Tyler probably has more units than I do. He's killing it. So anyway, Tyler's here. Some of these guys are on the front row here to fact check me if I share anything that's not true. They're here to tell me that I'm wrong. Donald Trump wrong. So we'll do a Q&A at the end, and hopefully that's helpful as well. So okay, so my story real quick. I got home from a mission, and like most people as they're transitioning into adulthood, I was very concerned about how I was going to provide for my future family and just reach my potential with my finances and other things in my life. I wanted to go to BYU. I got into BYU, wanted to study marketing at BYU and had to get a job to pay for school and expenses. And so initially got a job at a sushi restaurant, and I was a waiter and worked that job. I also worked at the MTC for a while. So I worked jobs where I was trading time for money. And I quickly realized school didn't ever come super easily for me. I realized that work was probably not going to work really well for me while I was in school. And that's kind of what drew me to trying sales. The other thing that I was excited about with sales was the idea that I could trade value for money so I could make money kind of quicker. A lot of the jobs while you're going to school, a lot of you have worked those types of jobs, and it's hard to get ahead working those types of jobs. So 7 years ago, I tried sales, and I fell in love with this idea of working really hard, adding revenue to the books of a company, and then getting paid for that revenue, and making more money doing that than I could something else. And then it allowed me to focus on school while I was going to school. So that's kind of my sales plug for the night. But sales for me has been the way that I've been able to afford to buy properties. After my second summer of doing sales, I was really frugal with my money. So when my wife and I got married, we were really careful with money, partially because I learned how hard it is to make a buck. Like any of you guys that have sold know that it's not easy to go and knock doors and sacrifice your time and get told no. And so I wanted to take that money and like put it under a rock and protect it with my life. That was my first move when I made any money. So we had saved a pretty good amount of money, about $50,000, and I just didn't want to touch it. I just wanted to protect it until I died. And then I got educated and I started reading books, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. If any of you haven't read that book, that's an amazing book and you should definitely read that. I started to listen to a podcast called The Bigger Pockets, which is another amazing resource. So I started getting excited about investing and taking that $50,000 and putting it to work. And so my first move, my wife and I, our first big investment, we wanted to buy property. And my first kind of thought tonight with real estate investing is just because you're buying property doesn't mean that you're investing. In Rich Dad Poor Dad, he talks about you can buy a home and that home can be a liability, or you can buy a home and that home can be an asset. And we wanted to buy a home that was going to be an asset. So an asset being something that produces income for you every month forever. And so that's what we did. Our first property that we ever bought, this was like almost 4 years ago now. My wife and I bought this fourplex, and it's in Provo. And to be able to do it, we just put 5% down on the property. So one principle I'm going to talk about later in my presentation is something that's called house hacking. And it's the strategy that my wife and I have used in a really big way to do what we've done in investing in real estate. And it's something that I always tell people that they should do when they're young, because there's just a short runway in your life where you're flexible and mobile and can get away with doing something like this. But when you house hack or when you move into a property, even if it has more units than just one, you can put not a lot of money down. So we put 5% down on this property, and Cole is my loan guy here in the corner and helped me structure that. And so we put $28,000 down on this fourplex. We bought it for $567,000. We lived in this basement unit and we rented out the other 3 units. And while we did that, we lived for pretty cheap, and it was a humble beginning. Like, it's not in a super nice neighborhood. It actually tested positive for meth when we bought the place. So it's in the hood, like, of Provo. And I know that you're like, there's no hood of Provo, trust me. If you roll through this neighborhood, yeah, like gunshots on doors and gun holes, crazy. But anyway, I brought my kid home to this place, a baby, and we lived in it, and we just did it for a year, and that was our plan all along. So when you own or occupy an investment property, you just have to live in it for 1 year, and then you can move out of it. So that's what we did, and then we moved into this duplex. And this was our second property that we ever purchased. Tyler was my agent on that. So this is Tyler, he's a real estate agent. He knows a lot about house hacking, so this is kind of what he specializes in. He's amazing. This is my sister Cassidy. She's also an agent. So she sold us a home, our primary home that we live in. So I'm gonna get to that. But I invited these guys to fact check me tonight. So we lived in the basement of this duplex, and so that we could rent out the top for more money. And we did that, and we lived for really cheap. And then we just kind of got the snowball rolling. And I don't want to bore you with like all the other moves that we've made or whatever, but I wanted to just kind of tell like my story. Basically, my wife and I, we delayed gratification. We lived in investment properties for as long as we could until my wife was ready to kill me. And then we moved into a home that we loved and are still in that home. So we did just one at a time. This was a fixer upper that we did. This is a duplex that we have in Provo. This is the home we live in now. And then once the snowball gets rolling, it gets really exciting. So we are a partner in an Airbnb that's in Hawaii. And then this week, it's kind of exciting, but we are closing on a 13 unit in Idaho Falls. And we actually have some partners that are in this room fist pumping right now. We just closed on that, or we're closing on that this week. So pretty cool. But yeah, anyway, my wife and I own 24 units now with this new one. And it's been a blessing to live off of the income that these properties produce. And for me, freedom is, it's waking up and knowing that if your boss fires you or whatever, that your family's going to be okay. And that's why I love real estate. But anyway, this is kind of my real estate story. And hopefully that just gives you a feel for my journey. But yeah, I'm gonna get into kind of the meat of the presentation tonight. So tonight, what I want to do, this is the first thing that we want to cover, is the basic benefits of investing in real estate. So, and I would love some questions or just thoughts as I'm going through this. But the first thing that we're going to cover is called appreciation. So who knows what appreciation is, or who could give me a really good definition of what appreciation is? Yeah.
So it's the opposite of depreciation, so the value goes up over time.
Yeah. So an asset that increases in value over time, the amount that it increases is called appreciation. So living in Utah right now, this should be a word that you've heard, because the market has increased a lot. It's appreciated a lot. Who knows how much in 2021, how much Utah's market appreciated? Anyone have a guess? Yeah, about that. What's the, you guys know the exact number?
25 to 28, depending on the can.
Crazy. So like north of 20%.
Yeah, Provo one was 28. Last year. 28%,
Last year.
2021.
2020 to 2021, yeah.
Crazy. So more than 20% in 1 year. The norm for appreciation, houses, since they've been keeping track of this stuff, houses generally appreciate like what, 3 to 4% a year. So we're experiencing crazy appreciation right now. Appreciation is not unique to just real estate. So most assets appreciate over time. That's how you make money in stocks, is you buy Tesla at whatever price. And if Tesla's value increases, then the stock appreciates and you make money when you sell it, right? So appreciation is not unique to real estate, but there are things about real estate that are amazing with appreciation. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. My goal tonight is to sell you on real estate versus a lot of other ways that you could invest your money. So I'm going to use the whiteboard real quick. I hope this works. Let's see. Yeah. And I'm going to use my fourplex as an example of why I like real estate and how awesome appreciation is in real estate versus stocks. So I bought my fourplex. So we're going to do real estate versus stocks. So I bought my fourplex for $567,000. So we're going to say an investment of $567,000 in real estate versus stocks. So last year, the stock market, who knows how much the stock market went up last year?
I don't know last year, but generally it's 10 to 12%.
Yeah, so generally it's that. Last year was it was an amazing year in the stock market as well. If someone wants to look it up, that'd be awesome, actually, real quick. Just give me, just look up the S&P 500 returns for 2021. 27%, which is crazy. So stocks were up 27% last year. Real estate, we've said, or let's just use 25%. So which is crazy, 25% in a year. So you look at that and your knee jerk should be, okay, stocks is a better place to park my money because stocks last year did 27%, real estate did 25%. Tanner said, usually stocks do 10 to 12%. Usually real estate does 3 to 4%. So why would I not take all of my money and invest it in stocks? Why would I ever invest in real estate? So my hope is to answer that question and get you excited about why real estate is better. So there's something called leverage. Who knows what leverage is in real estate? So with leverage in mind, or with real estate in mind, what does the word leverage mean? Yeah.
Is it how much you own the property?
Yeah, it's debt. So leverage is a fancy word for debt. I like real estate a lot because you can use debt as an instrument and as a tool as your friend. And in stocks, debt doesn't really exist. Like if you want to invest $567,000 in the stock market, you have to come up with that much money and invest it in the stock market. In real estate, you can use debt as your friend. So I know that we have been taught since babies that debt is a bad thing, and debt is a bad thing. Certain types of debt is a really bad thing. Credit card debt, car debt, like I'm definitely anti-debt. Debt is no bueno and can be bad for families and for your financial freedom. But real estate debt, the right type of debt, when you buy properties like that fourplex where I'll show you, we took out quite a bit of debt on that property, but I'm not the one that's on the hook for that debt every single month. Someone else is paying for that debt. So I had a payment on it, but I had tenants, and every month they pay me rent, and I use their rent to pay for my mortgage. So anyway, I like real estate because when we bought this place, we put 5% down on a $567,000 home. So, which is $28,000, I think. So let's say 28K was my investment. So we're gonna do some quick math. What is 27% of $567,000? You can do that math for me just really quick. So take
153.
Okay, 153K, perfect. Okay, so someone, let's say this time last year, they put $567,000 in the stock market, which is a lot of money. They got a 27% return on that money, and they made 153K in the stock market, right? Which is amazing. I want to use this real estate example though. So I bought this for 567. This was I bought that a couple years ago, but for this example's sake, let's say I bought this property last year at 567, and the real estate did 25%, right, as a return. So what did I make on what's 25% of 567? 141s. Okay, so I know you're looking at this now and you're like, okay, but 153K is more than 141K, right? What's the kicker on that though? Yeah. Right. So here, the money that I forked out for this investment was $28,000. And here I had to come up with $567,000. So my return on my money here is 27%. The math is pretty straightforward there, right? What's my return on my money here? Any math wizards in the house?
280%.
It's like north of that. It's 28K turning into 141K. It's like a 400 or 500% return. Yeah.
And what was the interest rate on the loan?
I guess that actually wouldn't. I don't think that matters. Does that matter? But I think it was a 4%.
That first one was a
4%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we refinanced it. So I think I was thinking about a 4%, Calvin. But yeah, so essentially in 1 year, 28K turned into $141,000 in equity.
I've got 503% increase.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah. So that's the power of leverage in real estate. The power of debt is you can use appreciation like crazy. There's so much upside when you're not in a property, a ton of money. And I know there's probably some of you that are like, well, what if the market tanked and went the other way? So let's address that. Tyler, why don't you share your take on that? Let's get some other people talking. So what if the market went the other way with stocks versus real estate in mind? Why don't you just share your take on why you're comfortable still putting only $28,000 down?
Yeah. So like when I first got into real estate, I was like, okay, this is the biggest problem I want to make sure I'm like really solid on. Because if the property value goes down, will the rents also decrease with it? That's like the first question I have, because I want to be able to make my mortgage payment if the property value is down. So I did a ton of research, and the government provides a lot of data to show what vacancy rates are like, and then what average rents are like on a like city metro level, and then on a county level for different areas of the country. So in like 2008, 2009, 2010, I saw the vacancy rate in Utah County and Salt Lake County there was not very much of a change. And then I saw the rents didn't actually dip that much at all. The reason for that is because if the economy does bad, then people like usually can't make their house payment if they own their house. So they either have to sell their house or they get foreclosed on, unfortunately. Are they gonna, when they move, are they gonna leave the country, the average American? No. Like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna rent. So what does that do to rental demand in a recession? It stabilizes rents. And so that's why I love real estate. Even in a recession, you know your rents are gonna be really stable. And we've got a really good track record of data that we can see that. So as long as you're in like a 30-year fixed loan and your payment is the same every month, then you're good with real estate. Yeah.
Thanks. That was way helpful. Any just questions on that, on appreciation and I guess with real estate in mind? Yeah, Calvin.
Well, I guess just to follow up,
Yeah.
with so like if you're worried about a dip with real estate, there's also the same worry with stocks as well.
Exactly. That's what I was just gonna share is and I like my position like Tyler's talking about in real estate with the dip a lot more than stocks. Because if I put $567,000 into the stock market and the market cuts in half, what happens to my money here? Like stocks are usually a liquid investment, meaning it's like real dollars invested into something, and that goes away and gets cut in half. It gets whacked if the market turns, right? In real estate, the value of your home for sure it goes down, but there are other wealth generators here involved, and that's a really good segue into my next piece here. But there's other places I can make money, and then the other thing is like my if the market turns, then that's okay. My home wasn't for sale anyway, you know, so I really don't feel that. Like I wasn't planning on selling the home anyway, so if the market turns, then that's okay. So yeah,
What's your interest rate if you don't live in a house?
usually higher if you don't live in the house.
Like, you know, how much?
Right now probably four.
I mean, typically on an investment property, you're gonna be anywhere from 0.5% to a full percent higher than a primary residence. So that's, again, coming back to the house hacking idea of buying a primary residence, you're gonna get a better interest rate. You're gonna be able to get into it for less money out of pocket. Live there for a year. Again, if you're buying it as an asset versus a liability, where it's still producing income, then it's giving you more flexibility to get into something in a year from now.
Yeah.
Question on Zoom.
Yeah.
Cameron Cheney wants to know, when evaluating a property to buy, what kind of property would you recommend for a first property? Would you recommend more of a duplex or something like
Yeah.
fixer upper?
Yeah, really, really good question. So I like multiple units, especially when you're married, because it means you can live in it and rent out other units, and it'll make your costs less. If you're single and have some money, like you actually do have a little bit more flexibility. You could buy a townhome even and rent it out by the bedroom and live in it. But I'm big on house hacking, meaning buy something where you can rent out another place underneath that roof, and it will make the numbers make a lot more sense than just buying a single family home.
I also like the single family home route with the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
It's something that Jackson pointed out.
Yeah.
So you're able to split basically the house in half like a duplex, but you're gonna be able to pay a lot less than you would for a duplex.
Your PG houses.
Yeah. There are things you can do to get creative, but the idea is that you want multiple units underneath one roof would be my take. So hopefully that helps. Yeah.
When you're renting like this, how much hands-on time are you spending like keeping up that property?
Yeah, very little. Managing, like in our fourplexes case, like managing a couple of units, believe it or not, does not take a lot of work. A lot of people and like parents, there's people that will scare you out of buying property because of the pains that come with it or whatever. And I can tell you from my experience, I've owned property for a couple of years now, and a lot of them I still manage myself, and it is not a lot of work. Sometimes when it rains, it pours. It like there's sometimes where there's a couple of days where you feel like you're doing some work, but I would say, yeah, it's not a lot, like a couple hours a month type deal. And the goal is long-term to not be managing stuff yourself. The goal, if you'll be disciplined with this and let the market appreciate and do some things, long-term, you can hire that out to where it's just a totally passive investment. I wouldn't recommend doing that right out of the gates though, because you're going to give away a pretty good amount of the rents to the property management company, and it just doesn't make sense. It's worth a couple hours here and there to keep that money. So, yeah.
Another question on Zoom here from Garrett. If you're living, so would you recommend not buying properties that aren't where you live then? So if someone wants to buy a property in a different state, is that a headache or is that still an option?
It's totally an option. It's not my niche, and so I haven't had a ton of experience with that yet. This Idaho, I guess I have done some lately, but you have to have a really good relationship with the property management company if you're going to do that. Would be my biggest thing on that. So I think your first deal should be a house hack where you live, is my opinion. And as time goes on, you can scale, and there's some of us that have looked at, like, there's some properties in the Midwest. Austin just did a deal in the Midwest because Austin's first deal was a primary residence, and he doesn't want to spend a ton of money as a down payment on an investment property. So for someone like him, it made sense to look at going to a market that's a little bit cheaper so that he doesn't have to fork out $150,000 for the down payment. So there are times where it makes sense, but I think for the masses here, if you're looking at doing your first deal, I love house hacking because you can put less money down, and there's a lot of advantages to that. Interest rates, how much you put down, all that stuff. Yeah.
And maybe talk about how, I know Tyler today told you on the phone, I heard him talking, you're gonna have to pay rent somewhere.
Yeah.
So you might as well buy where you're living and
Right.
have people pay your mortgage.
Yeah.
They're paying rent to you.
Yeah.
So maybe talk to that.
Yeah. I mean, I just
That's probably-
renting, like every time you pay your rent, you're making someone else wealthy. So you get to choose in your life whether you want to like work to build someone else's dream or build your own dream. So the quicker you can go put some money away and start building your own legacy and empire or whatever you want to call it, like it's better, you know? So yeah, the longer you're renting, the more you're just making someone else wealthy. And I just never wanted to live my life in a way to where I was just like hooking someone else up every single month with my hard work. You know, that sucks. So
Yeah, question on Zoom.
let's do one more question, then let's get to some other stuff here.
Is there a bet, maybe this might be for the agents, but is there a certain time of year that's better to start if you're looking to buy?
Cass?
Yeah, I can touch on that. I mean, that really depends. I say now is always gonna be the best time because you just you never know. Spring, a lot of times is a little bit busier in real estate because that's when everybody's kind of starting to look, and that's when inventory is getting up there too. And so if you can look in the summer, the fall, or the winter, it might be a little less busy, but like I said, it really just depends, and now is always gonna be the best time, so.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of just now is better than later, because a lot of people, yeah, some people, they think that they try to crystal ball it, like, I'm gonna buy in 8 months, that's gonna, when the weather ticks up, or like, I'm gonna wait for something, but again, those people that were saying that 12 months ago look super dumb right now. Like they just missed out on $141,000, and I made that, just like owning there wasn't a lot of work, but we proactively chose to just get off the sidelines, and so I don't know. And yeah, sometimes like what if the market tanked? I would have looked kind of dumb, but like long term, I'm comfortable with the market doing whatever it's going to do, because long term, if any of you guys have a dad or a grandpa that bought a home 40 years ago, he looks super smart right now, right? Because he bought it for 80K and now it's worth 500K. And I want to be that guy when I'm old. I want to be the guy that's like, where people are like, oh, he bought a bunch of stuff when he was young, and then he let time do what it does. So, okay, we're gonna keep moving. Sorry. Cash flow. So when the market turns, or even if the market's doing awesome, cash flow is amazing. It is freedom, and it's my favorite part of real estate. So what is cash flow? David owns two unit deals and is doing really, really well. What's cash flow?
Cash flow is the difference between the rent and your expenses.
Yes.
So it's whatever's left over that gets thrown in the pocket.
Yes. So rent minus expenses equals cash flow. And cash flow is amazing because it's income. Like it's every single month. If you can get cash flow coming in, that's where the passive income comes into play. And passive income creates freedom. My big thought on this is just you want to buy a property that cash flows. And yes, it is true right now the market's tough, and it's hard to find property that cash flows when you're putting not a lot of money down on properties, but it is possible. And there are agents here tonight that can help you do that. And I have a lot of confidence in that because that's been the case for me. But yeah, my big take here is just don't buy something just to buy something. It needs to cash flow, even if it's just a little bit of cash flow. Because just like any business, like if a business has negative cash flow, what happens to that business? It doesn't exist for very long, So if you buy a bunch of properties that have negative cash flow, you're probably not going to exist for very long. You're going to get yourself in trouble. And if the market turns, then if the value goes down and you have negative cash flow, then that's where you can get in trouble in real estate. Ian, you have something?
What are some signatures in a house that you look for that are like, oh, that could, potentially be cash flow?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Rents are really important to look at and do research on when you're buying a property. So, and a lot of you guys, like you've rented somewhere, and so you can have a really good feel for like, what would I pay for this in rent? So, I mean, the simple way to approach it is, what do I think I can get for in rent here? What are my expenses going to be? And then what's left over? And there is more to it than that, but that's kind of the simple way to answer that question. Yeah, cool.
I would just add, looking forward with it, right? Because in the house hacking phase, you're putting down 5%, your mortgage is $2,000 a month. Odds are you're not going to rent out the other unit for $2,000, right? So you're not, in essence, during that house hacking phase, cash flowing, right? But you're looking forward to that next year, where when you move out, if you're renting out that bottom unit for $1,350, and now you're going to be able to rent out the top for $1,600, Now I'm cash flowing $900 a month, right? So you're looking forward into that. And so my biggest thing on cash flow analysis is not getting too, cash flow is important, but not having too much of like analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Where you're getting too caught up on, oh man, I can't rent out Facebook for X amount to cover my costs, but you're in the house hacking phase of investing where that it takes time to be able to build in. And then once you do move out of those, like I have units that didn't produce me anything and now produce, 1,000, 1,500 a month of income that, when at the time weren't producing anything.
Yeah, usually when you move into it, it's obviously gonna have a negative cash flow because you're occupying one of those units, but the goal is that, okay, in a year from now, when I move out of this will produce me some money every single month. So you are forward, you're looking forward. Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like some people have like apps or calculators online. Where you can even put in like what your mortgage is and then like how much you want to charge for it, and that will actually show you how much you would be cash flowing.
yeah, when you walk through a property with an agent,
Heather
there's
has one.
tools that you can use to, okay, here's what my rents are estimated to be, here's what my mortgage would be, expenses, and you just, you do your research before you buy a property so that you're not buying something that has negative cash flow. So, yeah.
You can also just get on like KSL or Facebook and like look at basically comparables. So
Right.
what other 2-bed, 1-bath places are ready for in Provo or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Look at it through the eyes of a renter. Like, okay, if I were to rent in this neighborhood, what are they, what are other people paying? And can I get that? And sometimes you'll be surprised. Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a 3-bed, 2-bath. I was renting out upstairs and basement. And I was thinking I could get like 1,800 for 3-bed, 2-bath, and I looked at on KSL and people are renting places like that for like 2,500. So like,
What did you end up getting?
more than 2,300.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Sorry. Okay, cool. So we're gonna move on. Cash flow is amazing. The next wealth generator. So again, in real estate, I'm making money on all of these things. What is debt paid down? There's other ways that there's other things you can call this, but
It's when other people pay down the debt that you owe to that mortgage or that bank.
Yeah.
So you're not paying the mortgage itself, but your tenants are paying it. So it's purchasing the asset.
Right. So this is a wealth generator if you buy a property using debt. If you buy a property in cash, then this won't be a wealth generator for you. This is another reason why I like using debt when buying property is I have a mortgage, let's say of $2,000. The place rents for $2,500. I make cash flow, but then also when I pay my mortgage, I make money every single month because my debt is decreasing over time because I'm paying my debt down. So this is another wealth generator. And it's a little out of the gates, it's very little every month, but it adds up. And 10 or 15 years into owning a property, you could be making, $500 to $1,000 every month just paying your mortgage. So this is another really powerful way to get your money working for you. And then the last is tax benefits. So the reason why like the Donald Trumps and the Mitt Romneys, like some of these politicians that they've taken some heat over how much they've paid in taxes is something called depreciation. And I know we've talked tonight about appreciation, but there's something called depreciation as well. And who could give me their best definition of what depreciation is in real estate? Anyone want to take a stab at that? Yeah, Jared.
I want to say it's something along the lines of, say your property depreciates each year.
Yep.
And you can calculate that as a loss, and then that's what you put into taxes.
Yeah, way good. So essentially the way it works is the government wants us to own property, okay? And they give every property that's purchased, they give a life to it. And that life, if it's residential, if you're buying 1 to 4 units, the life that they give is 27.5 years. So the land itself doesn't depreciate, but the the structure on the land, it depreciates over time. So let's use this 567 again. So when I bought this, the government basically says, this has a life of 27 years. Divide that, 567 or divide 27 into that, and you get like $15,000 or $20,000. $20,000, and I get to use that number every single year to push against my income that I make. And it allows me to not pay as much in taxes. So when you have a ton of real estate, that depreciation is super, super powerful. And that's why there's billionaires that just own a crap ton of real estate and they don't pay very much in taxes. And that's why like Donald Trump, like he's he didn't pay a lot in taxes. That's probably why I wouldn't show it for a while, is like he made a lot of money and but he's not breaking rules, right? So a lot of these people that take heat, that are politicians, they're not breaking rules. These are laws these are codes that are legal. So depreciation is really, really powerful and can be used against your income so that you don't have to pay as much in taxes. Yeah. Ty?
Can I say something like?
Yeah.
I'm in a sales type role. I'm commission based as an agent. Selling pest control, you're commission based. You guys probably know that's the highest tax bracket or way to get taxed is owning primarily commission based income. Last year I ran the numbers. I would have had to pay on my income probably 80 to 100 grand in taxes. But because I own real estate, I paid 15 grand in taxes because of depreciation. So it's massive, like how big of a difference it can make. It's a real benefit.
Yeah, it's real value that is staying in your pocket and you're not paying it, to someone else. So it's a real wealth generator, and I love it. I've used depreciation on my properties, and it's helped me keep a lot of money in my pocket that I can then go and use to buy new properties instead of give it away. So any questions on any of these? I know I've covered these last couple kind of quicker so that we can get through this, but any questions on this stuff? Cool. So I want to cover this. This is the last slide. And then we'll do a quick Q&A, but where do I start? So step number one is learn. Your confidence will increase in a huge way if you will educate yourself. Like for probably 2 or 3 years before I purchased property, I was like listening to podcasts, read this Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I like Grant Cardone a lot. He uses some curse words, but he's awesome. And these are all amazing resources to look up online, read books, and learn about some of these things that we're talking about tonight. And as you go through properties, and when you put some money away and you're ready to get into the game, if you have knowledge, your confidence will increase, and you won't lead with fear. You'll lead with faith. I wanted to highlight Tanner Denning. Tanner has done a couple years with us at Point, and I think 2 years ago when we were in Oregon, Tanner had put some money away, and I was always on Tanner like, dude, you should buy a property. You should buy a property. And in August, I think he would just stay in his own car group like the whole month because he got pumped and he was listening to Bigger Pockets episodes like the whole month. And he came back and boom, he dropped in on a property and he's made a lot of money on that property. It's appreciated a ton. And so if you'll educate yourself and just learn a lot, you won't panic and be nervous. The worst thing you can do is turn on the news or listen to this narrative that like the market's going to tank, the market's crazy, the sky is falling. If you'll educate yourself, you'll understand that the future's bright and people make a lot of money in real estate. So
with that, last year people were saying like, now's not the time to get into real estate. Like my grandparents were like telling me not to do it, and then look at the results from just a year of being able to have that property.
Right. Okay, so number 2 is earn. So find a job where you can add value and get paid for that value that you add. If you're working for someone else and it's in an hourly role, and it doesn't matter how much harder you work than the person next to you, if you want to buy real estate, you're in the wrong job. So you should come work for us or go work a job where you can get paid for the value that you bring. That was the best thing I ever did, and it'll quicken your path to capital which will quicken your path to being able to participate in real estate. Number 3 is learn to play defense with your money. So spenders, they don't get to do this stuff because they don't have any money. They get rid of all their money before they're able to participate. So save your money, be diligent with it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say on that. That people, if you have bad spending habits, just try to repent and get better. Like, quit spending your money because you're giving it away to other people. And if you can keep it and then invest it in things that are yours long term, it will bless you and your family forever. So start getting more disciplined with your money. But you can't save your way to millions. So you need to go and sell something or add value. And then the next step would be get qualified. So I actually didn't know about these, and I called Cole in preparing this, but there's 4 C's when it comes to getting qualified to buy a property. So if your question is, okay, like, you know, we've got a little bit of money, but what else do I need to do to go and be able to invest in a property? These 4 C's can be really helpful. So capacity, capital, collateral, and credit. Capacity essentially is your income compared to your debt. So you may have heard of something called a debt to income ratio. When we talk about capacity, that's kind of what that's talking about, is how much are you making? Loan companies are going to look at how much are you making? Okay, you're making 50K a year, but you have crazy car payments and, you know, like all these expenses coming out. Like, why would they ever loan you some money? You have a terrible track record of, you know, taking care of money. So you need to make good money and have little debt is the best way that I could sum that up. Capital is just cash. So that's the next thing that you'll need. Obviously, to go buy a property, you will need some cash. The cool thing about real estate is, again, you can use debt and you don't need a ton of money to go and start in your first deal. So I guess if you own a property, raise your hand if you're new. How much did you put down on your very first property?
$4 grand.
$4 grand? Oh, that was that
I
condo.
bought that for $120.
Oh my gosh. That is stupid. Oh my gosh. Okay, Tyler, how much?
Probably not.
What did you put down on your first property?
I think the down payment was like 18 grand.
Okay, Cass?
I think about 5%, which 5% of, you bought it for 210.
Yeah, so 15K
Yeah.
or 10K. David?
About 35.
Okay, 10.
20K.
Okay. So in the Balin, are you closing on one soon?
I close on my first one in the week.
Sweet, man. Congrats. That's awesome. Let's give Balin a hand. That's sweet. No, I mean, I guess I just wanted to give you a feel for like, how much money do I need in the bank? And that's not an overwhelming amount of money. Some people put very little money down. The market's up. And so I would say 25 to 30K. If you have that in the bank, then you're ready to roll with capital would be maybe a little bit more than that, but collateral is the next step. This is just lending companies are going to look at the quality of the property you're buying. If you're buying a property that's not going to cash flow, or if it's just like objectively a bad buy, then they won't lend on it. So the appraisal needs to come back at the right number. There's some boxes that need to be checked for the property to check out. And then the last is credit. And there's 2 pieces to this. It's your credit score and your credit history. Who knows what the difference is on those? Kayla?
I think your credit score just shows, it's like the number that, like over the course of, like all the credit that you owe, it just kind of shows like you are good at making payments.
Yeah.
Like you have a variety of credit.
Right.
And then the credit history.
Yeah.
That just shows like the kind of history, or like, do you make payments on time?
Yeah.
And like what kind of like payments have you made? Is it credit card or is it auto loan? Is it?
Sure.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Sorry, the credit score just kind of shows like how good of a, like have you been good about paying back that? So it's like a good credit score is like 700 plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the higher the credit score, the lower the
Yeah.
interest rate.
What I guess Cole, anything to add to that with like what credit scores are lending companies looking for
Yeah,
Just
I would,
anything add on the.
yeah,
on the
I would
score
first
or-
add on, like, so the difference of credit score and credit history. I've been doing it about the same time that you've been doing, so it's about 7 years. And you can have, somebody can have a bad credit score, but the report itself, the credit history is not that bad. So in those scenarios, getting that person up to a higher credit score is very easy, right? Of paying that, maybe that credit card is too high on the limit, or maybe it's a collection that you didn't know that was on credit. That's 90% of people have a collection and they have no idea when we pull credit. I would say probably that high. And so even just having that removed makes, I mean, I've had clients that make 100-point difference in credit, right? It's a huge difference. So credit score, yes, typically Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are conventional loans. That's generally what we're looking for, are 700 plus, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you're in the 600s, you can't get a conventional loan, but typically anything under 700 down to 580, you're looking at an FHA loan. FHA loan has kind of a wrap for being a first-time buyer loan. That's not the case. It's just that it's minimal down. It's only 3.5%. But conventional, you can get for, I mean, there are conventional loans for 0% down, but even, I mean, I would recommend putting down at least 3 or 5% down, especially on a first or a second buy with a conventional product. So yes, having credit over 700 makes a difference there.
Cool. Any questions on that, Karen?
So this was my hang up this last year.
Yeah.
buying a house. So correct me if I'm wrong, but so in our line of work, they want 2 years of
Tax.
tax.
Yeah.
history.
Yeah.
So I guess like if you haven't got to that point yet, or it's not substantial, but you have like the capital, like what advice do you have for that?
That's a really good question. So yeah, in a 1099 job, usually what they're gonna look for is 2 years of tax returns showing, and then they're gonna average those 2 years of tax returns and say, okay, this is like your salary, this is what you make capacity wise. So that's gonna be kind of a capacity issue. There are creative options. I haven't used any of them, and it is tricky to kind of get around. But any advice on that? It's like if someone doesn't have yet their second year of tax returns or whatever.
Selling.
Yeah, I mean, is it a waiting game?
Sometimes it is a waiting game, especially if you don't have any 1099 experience before going out and selling. The exception is if you were paid a 1099 job before going out and selling, then even if you only have 1 year of tax returns, but you still had 1099 before that, you're still in a sales job. But there are exceptions where you can get away with just 1 year. But typically, yes, 2 years is going to be across the board for most home products. Doing something like that. Now there are creative loan options that lenders will offer. I do a ton of what are called DSCR loans, which is a debt service cover ratio, and it's a no income doc loan. So borrowers don't provide me any tax returns, and we use the property itself as the income qualification. So again, there are creative ways to get financing, which is kind of what Parker's alluding to, but ultimately I would say the biggest mistake, or not really mistake, but the most common thing that I see with self-employed borrowers is that issue, either not having a 2 year history, or what's probably more common is people having a history being in business for 2, 3, 5+ years, but they're taking advantage of some of those tax codes too much.
Yeah.
And to where, because self-employed, that's one of the issues that if you do make 100 grand, but you tell the IRS that you made 20, lending companies are only using 20. Now there's some things that we can add back in there, depreciation being one of them, mileage, there's a couple things in there that we can add back in. But that's one of the biggest issues that we run into with self-employed borrowers. Again, there's creative options.
Yeah, so you want to be aggressive on your tax, on your deductions and stuff, but not so aggressive to where you're showing, if you make like 100 grand, you're showing you made like 20. you have to keep that, I mean, sweet.
Which
you're
you
keeping-
laugh, but
you're
that is
keeping a
very
bunch of money in the bank, but you're not going to be able to
Some of you
qualify
probably
for.
already done that.
property.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
D-Will, did you have some, and then we'll do Tyler?
Yeah.
Sorry, my voice, I sound like a kid.
Yeah, W-2, full-time W-2 job in the off season.
Yeah.
I didn't want to wait another year for a tax return, but I had the money to buy a house. So I got a job at Mountain America as a teller and I hated it, but I got a house within a couple months.
That's another really good way. Is if you're not in school, or even if you are and you have kind of a light load, you could go get a W-2 job that's decently paying. And that sometimes will move the needle enough to where you
Gotta
can
be
go.
full-time.
And you know, in David's case, David, he had the capital, he had the credit, he had been working on those things, and his only snag was that one. And so he said, I'm gonna go hate my job for a while, but this will allow me to buy a property. Let's do Tyler and then Tan and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, go get a full-time job. The other thing that you can do is co-sign. I don't know if you know this, I co-signed with my brother-in-law on my very first property. Because I have everything else on there, but
Yeah,
just not the income history, and I was going to school. Yeah, you at the
Right.
time.
Co-signing is another powerful one. So if you have a dad that has good credit or a mom that has good credit, that's a really, it's another awesome approach. And that doesn't mean they'll be on the loan with you forever. Usually you can refi them off of it within a year or two, and then you don't have to worry about like partnering with a family member or whatever. But to get you in the door, usually you can do that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say co-signing is really good. Just make sure to do an operating agreement with it too.
Yeah.
So that you don't get screwed by your family.
So I actually just have a question about like getting a job. It's like we tried to buy a house this year. It's hard because we don't have the 2 years tax returns.
Yeah.
And when we met with the loan officers, they said they want 2 years tax returns, period, regardless of the industry that you work in, and it has to be the same field. And because like we've jumped around jobs so much since like the mission being college students, right?
Yeah.
We've changed fields so many times that they say it's not gonna have to.
So if someone's done
So that
1
is
year,
something to be
if someone's done 1099 1 year and they jump into a W-2 job,
So that's what I was gonna point out. If you go from W-2 to 1099, lending companies see that as a greater risk, right? Because you're going from the.
yeah, but what if they go from
No,
1099
no,
to
that's what I'm saying.
W-2?
So like, from that direction, they see that as a greater risk because you are now the weight is on your shoulders, right? But from 1099 to W-2, as much as we don't, I still don't understand it because employees are still at-will employees that can be fired at any point. But lending companies love a W-2 job, right? And so that is a very common hack that people use to be able to jump that to where, because you're still selling every summer, but to be able to have a W-2 job where you're getting a salary for 60K or whatever, and then all of a sudden we're able to use a 60K. Now, it might be a change of industry to where we've got to combat a little bit, right? And so sometimes there are scenarios where you do have to be on that job for 6 months. But if it is somewhat in that line of industry, then you can paint that picture. That's a very gray area of basically being able to say it's not necessarily the industry, it's the same line of work. So if it's a sales job, like I have a guy that we just closed for that was a salesman at T-Mobile and then became a real estate agent. And so we were able to paint the picture that he was still sales at T-Mobile versus a realtor, which is definitely not the same industry. Right?
You guys, have you met with multiple loan people on that?
We have
Have you?
all of
Yeah.
the same thing.
Try Cole, he might be able to help you out.
Apparently.
Yeah, he's amazing. So, okay, cool. And then next step, buy real estate. So house hacking is what I would do. It's the best way to get in early and not have to wait till you make a ton of money. The reason why we talk about house hacking is, does anyone know if you don't move into the property yourself and you want to buy an investment property, how much money do I have to put down?
A lot.
25%. Yeah, 25%. So a 567. This same house now is probably worth 850, and 850 times 0.25 is a really sad number. Like it's a lot of money, and I would never buy that property now, putting that much money down. But I was happy to do it house hacking because I could put less down, you know. So house hack is what I would suggest. If you're married and have a bunch of kids or something, that's a hard sale, and yeah. it's gonna get harder and harder as life goes on, so just try. And then repeat, just stay with it. That's been my my process. I've made mistakes along the way, and I'm convicted that this is the best thing for our future. And I love real estate as a way to have passive income and hedge against inflation. I guess my last thought tonight is if you've seen inflation numbers, they're like 10% plus this year. Meaning if you had $1 million last year and you hit it under a rock, that $1 million in purchasing power now is worth 900 grand. Like that's super sad. And so you can be a victim and just kind of let that, you can let inflation control you, or you can go and buy stuff and hedge against it. I guess the best way I could say that. So anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. Any last questions? Let's do a quick Q&A. And the food's probably here. We've gone a little bit long, but questions? Yeah, Karen.
So with that first deal you did with the fourplex, at what it's at now, but like say you're in a situation you go live in it again, would you buy the property?
Oh, that's a good question. So would I house hack that fourplex again?
If it was worth 800 grand.
If it was in
For
this
at 850. Yeah, I mean, it's the same, believe it or not, like I was asking myself that same question at 567. The answer is, do the numbers work? Like rents are higher than they used to be there. And in some cases, the answer is definitely yes. Like I haven't run the numbers on that deal now. Like if I, would I go back and buy that same property now? The answer to that is have the rents increased enough to support how much more I'd have to put down, like would my numbers make sense? And these guys, agents if you find the right agents, they're really good at helping you stay disciplined and buy the right properties. Not buy something just to buy something, but buy something that will yield you a good return. And usually, if you can get a 10+% return on your money, then you're at least right now you're hedging inflation to where you're like breaking even, but yeah, hopefully that helps. It's honestly case by case. I'm still buying properties like 100%. We just closed on that place in Idaho Falls, and I will continue to buy properties, and I will never like be on the sidelines, because I do believe in a bright future. Like I believe that houses are going to continue to increase in value, and we'll all be 50 years old one day and look back, and houses, believe it or not, will be worth a lot more than they are right now. Like I know that that's the case because history has said so, and I'm going to bet on a long history for sure versus like what the news is telling me.
And even if you, like I just ran the numbers, it could be wrong. If it's 860 grand, it's only, but it's 40 grand for 5%. So you're going to make more than that this summer.
Yeah.
Because you're a baller, but yeah, so you just got to look at it that and talk to these guys. But we have Tanner with the question, and then we had 3 questions online on Zoom. So after that,
I was just gonna go off of that, like finding a good deal it's just a numbers game. Like you're running the numbers, if it makes sense on paper, then it's a good deal. It's not like how the house looks, if it's pretty or not pretty.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's got nothing to do other than determining if you can get the rents to make up for the mortgage that you're gonna be paying and expenses. on
Right.
top of that.
Yeah. When you're buying these types of properties where it's an asset, right? A primary residence that's like a sexy home for your family to live in is a liability. Like it'll appreciate, and when it appreciates, you could definitely say it's an asset. But if the home doesn't appreciate like crazy, you're losing some other wealth generators, right? So the cash flow and some of those other things you're losing as wealth generators. But yeah, to Tanner's point, like some of my properties they're not the cutest properties in the world, but the numbers were amazing, and so that's why we bought the property. So yeah,
I would just add on to that sometimes in this type of market, and Tyler, Cass, you correct me if I'm wrong, but for most people that I see buying either multi-units or even just a landlord that's selling a rental property right now, it's because it's appreciated so much in value that it's very common in this market for the property to be under rented, right? And so if you're only going off of what it's currently being rented for, it's very common that the numbers don't make sense. right? I have a guy under contract right now on a duplex in Mill Creek that I've never actually seen it this bizarre, but the purchase price is $525 duplex. The renters have been there for 30 years. Each unit is selling, or is renting currently for $450 a unit. I can promise you that on paper, that deal does not make sense. But they're on a month to month, and they've already been given notice that they're paying.
Yeah, you change that rent.
100%. He's gonna be able to rent out each side for at least 1,500.
My favorite deals are buying on rent disparity. So what is rent, this disparity is like the difference between what it is and what it should be. And if there's a big rent disparity, there's been that on some of the properties that I bought where the fourplex, there was a family that was in it for 15 years. They're still there, but their rent is double what it used to be, less than ours. But they were paying like $550. It's a 3-bed, 1 bath. Like really, it's not super cute, but it's cute enough for $1,000, not $550. And so yeah, rent disparity. Sometimes people will sell a property being like, this thing only rents for this, so this is what we think we can get. You can go look at it and be like, I think you can get a lot more for rent, so I'm willing to pay $850 for a property because the rents, I can increase them to where that makes sense.
These guys can look up what people are paying rent in the area that you're buying the house.
Yeah.
Let's do these questions online. real
Okay,
quick.
let's do it.
There's 4.
Well, let's take like 3 more questions then. We'll call
Let's hit these 4. There's 4.
Okay.
Do you have anything in stocks to retirement fund, et cetera, or all your investments with real estate?
Yeah, so I have some stock stuff, but real estate for me has definitely been like bread and butter. So I had a year where I hadn't yet purchased real estate and I made good money doing sales, and I used a traditional IRA to lower my taxable income. And that has like tripled in since I've invested in it, and I don't care. Like it doesn't better my life. Like I'm not a big retirement account person, just personally, because I want to live an awesome life before I'm 65 years old. So everyone has a different tune on that, and it's okay if you disagree with me on it, but real estate's kind of bread and butter for me.
That's good. Then Cameron Cheney. How long do we have to live in the house hack property to do the smaller down payment /
1 year.
1 year?
Yep.
Sometimes 5 to 6 months if the lender's okay.
If you're talking to Cole.
If your lender is a family member,
Yeah.
you can
5 to 6
get
months.
away with murder.
Yeah, basically at closing, you're signing an affidavit that says you intend to occupy the property for 12 months.
Intent is the key word.
We're saying that's
Yeah,
all
you
you're
need to live in it a year. So we've lived in most of our stuff a year. Some of it like 8 months of the fall and winter, and then when we've gone and sold, we've moved out because we intended to live there a year. But work took me elsewhere.
Yeah, a lot of us sell so you can subcontract or what's it called? Sublease. Or
Yeah.
just under the table have someone Venmo you that's.
But a
living
lot of
there.
times you can tell, like, it's all about telling a story. And if you're in it for 8 months and then you have to leave for work, like work took me elsewhere, you could move out of it and still be, I've never had problems with that. So.
All right, then we have Posse. He said, how much was your monthly mortgage payment on your first property, and about how much money were you getting from tenants paying rent every month?
Yeah, so the
So the
cash
cash
flow
flow.
on the fourplex, so when I bought it, my payment was $3,200. And we rented the other units out for $1,000. So we lived there for $200 plus utilities, which was sweet.
Then you moved out.
Then we moved out and we've raised rents a little bit. So I think the rents now are like $4,400 total. And we refinanced the property. So now my payment is $2,600. So I collect $4,400 in rent and the payment is $2,600. So we make, after expenses, like $1,500 a month.
Cool. And then Cameron Miller, he said, in your opinion, should you be patient, grind, and try to find an off-market deal to get a good return, or buy something at market value and have it probably cash flow to zero?
Why do you take that?
I think that's like an assumption that's definitely not the case. Like, I helped people do 40 house hacks last year, and just because you're buying on the MLS doesn't mean it's not cash flow. Most of the properties we buy still are on the MLS because 95% of the inventory is on the MLS, you know. The key is just seeing value. I try to see value that other people aren't seeing, right? And then our minimum bar last year was $800 a month cash flow after you move out. And this year it's gonna be like $700 a month cash flow after you move out. And that's mostly MLS deals, but we do a lot of.
So MLS, can you define what that, so people know what that is?
It's called a multiple listing service. It's just a public, most real estate is bought and sold on like a public website where
With
yeah.
agent access.
There are there's off-market deals. Tyler he's helped me get two of my houses. He's helped me with some off-market. Sometimes you'll have an agent that has some relationships with some off-market deals, so you don't have to compete with the masses, but like some of my best ones are on market too. So it's hard. Calvin, did you have something? We'll just do it one or two more.
I mean, I just want to ask, is it?
Yeah.
Like, is it better in other states than what we've seen? Like, do different laws in different states? Have you
Yeah,
looked into that?
really good question. I like Utah a lot as a rental market. It's going, in my opinion, it's going to become even more renter friendly because of the shortage we're having in housing. And there was actually a law passed like a month or two ago that pointed to that being the case. There used to be a thing called mother-in-law apartments. And basically this law that was just passed kind of did away with mother-in-laws. Essentially, mother-in-laws are, to be legal, if you buy a mother-in-law apartment house, you're supposed to rent it out to someone that's like a blood family member. They just passed something in law like a month or two ago that literally said that that's no longer a thing. As long as you have an accessory apartment, you can rent it to anyone. So the needle is moving in a direction in Utah that's really renter friendly with a lot of laws. And then obviously appreciation has been amazing in Utah. I like Utah. The economy's amazing. Idaho is amazing. Idaho was #1 in the country in appreciation last year, and Utah was #2. So yeah, amazing places to invest. Yeah.
Just going back to like how to make sure that the property's gonna work, like with rents and everything.
Yeah.
Something that Tyler pointed out with me when we were walking through properties together is it doesn't have to necessarily be like a family upstairs, family downstairs. Like for me, like I rent out to college students, so I rent per the room.
Yeah.
And that can generally increase the amount of rents that I can collect in a month compared to just renting it out to the family.
Right.
So sometimes you got to be creative in how you're going to strategize, how you're going to collect those rents, and that can either increase or decrease, your cash flow each month.
Yeah. And usually if you're gonna rent to singles, it's gonna take more work. Sometimes it's worth it though. If you can get a lot more in rent, it's worth the couple extra hours you might spend in a month dealing with single people and all the problems that come with renting to single people. But yeah, any last questions? Yeah, well, let's do one more.
Alright, sorry, I was just wondering, have any of your homes been like move-in ready, or did you have to fix up most of them?
That's a really good question. It's a good one to end on. Some of them, yes, but a lot of them, I like to buy distressed properties that need a little bit of love. Not a lot of love. One of them was a huge project, but most of them have been a little bit of love, and then you can force some equity in them by adding that, and then you can refinance them and the numbers work better. So that people that ask the question, like, how do I be competitive in this market right now? That's usually my answer is if you're going to go buy something that's turnkey and really cute, you're probably going to pay a ton of money for it. But if you can go buy something that's like, oh, that looks kind of like, that's not awesome, but I could make that awesome really easily. Those are awesome properties to buy. So
I know you're trying to.
Sorry.
So just define what you mean by a little bit of love. Like, is that like
floor and
Okay,
paint,
that's-
LVP floor
Floor
and
weeds,
paint.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Okay. I just
Easy,
wanted to,
easy stuff like that. Yeah, like we had one. We had a place in Pleasant Grove that it had plumbing for a kitchen apartment, and there wasn't a kitchen apartment in it, and it was priced in a way to where like the kitchen apartment, like no one knew that it was plumbed for a kitchen apartment. So there's that duplex in Pleasant Grove. We bought it for $321, and I walked through it with Tyler, and we found out it had plumbing. The basement had plumbing for a kitchen. We spent $7,000 adding a kitchen into the basement, and then the equity went like this because now it's like, oh, it's a 2-unit house. Everyone gets all crazy because everyone in Utah County is all frugal and trying to make it, and they're teaching this exact same presentation. So yeah, now I have a 2-unit house that I paid really not a lot of money for. So there's things like that you can do to be creative, and that is how you handle this market. in my opinion, so. Cool, thank you guys for coming. These guys can answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions. There's food downstairs. It's probably cold now, but